Welcome back to Dishing with Patricia. I'm so excited today to bring my special guest. I'm not going to tell you who it is just yet. I want to remind you that Dishing with Patricia is a plant based food podcast, videocast. Not only are we talking about food, we're talking about current events. I'm going to share with you some of my recipes, and my guest is going to assist me today in my cooking. I cannot wait. I just have to share this with you. So please welcome Congressman Dwight Evans. Thank you. Now, Dwight
Yes.
is represents the third district for the
For the state
Congressional
of Pennsylvania.
state of Pennsylvania.
Correct.
I welcome you.
I thank you, and it is my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this. Definitely this with Patricia. And I thank you because of just this opportunity to talk about a subject that I think is nearly and dearly to everybody, not just in Pennsylvania, but in the nation and in the world. I'll tell you a little story. When I was in South Africa and I was traveling during that, I recall seeing a ShopRite in South Africa. And as I was traveling and saw ShopRite, I saw that there are food deserts in South Africa, and it's all around the world. This problem is not just unique to Pennsylvania and to America. It is a challenge and an issue that is all around the world about the availability of quality food.
Why is that?
Well, I think it's because policymakers don't necessarily view food as a solution. But I share with you going back to the days when Bob Dole was around as a United States Senator and George McGovern. They were from farm states. But unfortunately, as an urban perspective, we have never concentrated and used food as a solution to our health issues that we have today.
Why?
I think fundamentally, to be honest with you, we much prefer to deal with ways of insurance, right? When we could in return deal with ways that could really address people's challenges directly.
Prevention.
Correct. Prevention is very good because, as you said, there's a hospital on the main line that has a greenhouse, and they use food as a way to address the challenges that people have. So I think it's important to understand that food is medicine.
Yes.
And it's important that you have this tool. And it's a lot cheaper than the insurance system.
Yes.
Right? It's a lot cheaper than the insurance system. And how you use food, how do you use it in terms of curing yourself?
So tell me this. I know typically when you go to the doctor, if they tell you you have a chronic disease, if you have high blood pressure, if you have diabetes, cardiovascular disease, all these chronic diseases, all goes back to food. So tell me, why aren't they making better decisions in the medical school as far as nutrition? Don't you think it should start there? In changing how your doctor is treating you in the relationship of food and how food can bring about change because food is medicine.
Well, see, you're talking about finance things that are involved. That's what you just said. You kind of gave me the lead in when you made that statement because you're talking about dollars involved in the aspect of medicine, pharmaceutical aspects, when food can be the way that really offers a much more effective way and a way in terms of people's health. So you kind of, when you asked that question, you sort of answered it in my judgment in terms of policy. That's what you basically said. Is there a better way to treat situations? Because when a doctor did, the first thing they always do tell you, go eat right, eat properly. Don't they always, that usually the advice they say to you?
I find that in teaching I also teach classes about nutrition.
Correct.
And one of the things that I found, people don't know.
Correct.
They don't know. The doctor, you go to the doctor, they send you home with all these, don't eat this, don't eat
Correct.
that. And you're like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
What is an avocado?
Right.
How does the avocado help me? You
Correct.
just put it on my list. You don't tell me how I'm supposed to pick the avocado.
Correct.
When am I supposed to know it's ripe?
Correct.
When it's rotten? How do I eat this? How do we change this mindset?
Well, it's like this discussion. It's education. It's education. You're talking about a form of behavioral education.
Yes.
And you have to undo a certain type of behavior that we have gotten into for so many years. Let's talk about obesity. Look at obesity, right? What leads into diabetes, what leads into high blood pressure. All those things can be corrected if you affect their behavior. So when you talk about interventions, it is behavior that you want to try to deal with. You know, a gentleman one time said to me, I think you know him well, he talked about enlightened leadership, right? Enlightened leadership. So you have to look at the policymakers and exactly are they enlightened leadership in terms of do they want to cure the problem? Do they want to assure? And then remember, there's a distinction between poor people, Black people, Latino people, and how they treat. Look at the communities and look at where they eat at, what kind of places they eat at, what's available. So I'm gonna talk to you later. It's the aspect of food desert is why I came up with the idea of supermarkets concentrated in underserved areas.
Definitely.
Which I joined up when I tell you a little story. Michelle Obama had the pleasure of meeting a gentleman when she started the Let's Move movement. And I met somebody who used to work for them, and I gave this idea that I had developed in Pennsylvania when I was in the state legislature. And I gave him the idea. I remember calling my staff person, must have been 10 o'clock at night. I said, get that information to the White House. I was invited by the Obamas to the White House to introduce them to the concept of dealing with the food deserts. That concept went from Pennsylvania national in the Farm Bill. I was on the Agriculture Committee in the first term I got elected. And the Farm Bill is dealt with every 5 years. And now we have the first African-American chairman of the Agriculture Committee from Georgia. First chairman in the history of America. See, you don't know that or hear that because of you don't hear the prominence of the aspect of the Agriculture Committee. You hear things about finance, you hear things of
very important.
you and I both know that if you understand domestic agriculture international agriculture. I went on a tour to Brazil, to Argentina, to Honduras, right, with the chairman of the Agriculture Committee. I went on a tour at those sites, and just to see exactly how that policy was in return affecting places like Pennsylvania. See, those policies have a way, those kinds of food policy. That's why I say food policy is foreign policy. Food policy is foreign. I asked that to a former secretary of the state under the Clintons, Madeleine Albright, and I was a brand new freshman legislator. And I said, talk to me about food policy, right? Now, if you want to affect the world, look at the food policy and effect it's having on people.
And what did she say?
She said I was right.
Well, one of the things that I found that if we change our policies, if we are feeding people correct, that will create jobs.
That create look, that affects climate change.
Yes.
That affects economics, social behavior. When you talk about the disparity racially, if you're feeding people right and you're treating them right, I'll assure you, just like you smiled a few minutes ago, when we start talking about food, there's a little smile on your face, right? Because of the environments, people, families, look, families act very differently if an environment. Look how children act.
Yes.
Look how adults act. Look how relationships exist. If you feeding right and you feeding that right kind of food,
yes,
That was something that came to me very basic. I thought about my grandmother, who's no longer alive, and basically how we, fed. We always loved that. My mom, we loved those meals around them tables. So to me, only thing I did is transform that information that I learned from being at that table to public policy. I took that experience that I learned at that dinner table, lunch, dinner, breakfast, right? And then I said, I got in the position. That's where I got in the appropriation committee when I was with the state house. No African American ever in the history of Pennsylvania had ever been on the chairman of appropriation. And then when I got to Washington, I got in a position where Charlie Rangel, who at one time was the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. This is the very same committee that Thaddeus Stevens, who used to be very close with Abraham Lincoln, right from Lancaster, like how they did the Civil War. Basically, you need the Ways and Means Committee. And the first chairman of the committee was from the Pennsylvania city of Philadelphia. So I am the first African American to ever be on the Ways and Means Committee, which in return, that's how I affect food policy.
Correct.
Like when you talk about food policy,
Correct.
I'm not just talking about in America, I'm talking about around the world.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, this planet now relies on each other.
Correct.
We're not here just
Interdependent, correct.
Yes. Now tell me about the Medicare Act that was introduced recently.
Right. Well, basically there's this constant debate about, Medicare. Some people talk about Medicare for all, but to me, there's a concept that I'm pushing right now is called food. It's a food initiative that I'm pushing, and I'm doing it with Mainline Health, right? And I'm doing it, and I'm focused on trying to build a collaborative, particularly it's in West Philadelphia, I'm targeting because the numbers are greater in terms of poverty in my district. I represent West Philadelphia, North Philadelphia, and the Northwest. So this initiative is to try to get folks to function on collaborative because historically doctors have a tendency to make medical decisions in isolation. So what I'm trying to do is to link up, right? I'm trying to link up in a collaborative so that people know that the availability. So when we talk, since you said nutrition, I think you have nutrition, they should be around everywhere. Because if people understand how to make food and what the importance of food is and the decision making about how you cook food and what it means, you know how much you will enhance and address the food problems we have if you have a food nutrition, that person and the value of it, that there's nothing that can replace it. That's housing, health, and food. All those things intersect. And the question is, I'm trying to have we be intentional in terms of directing policies that will affect people's behavior.
Are the insurance companies receptive to this?
Oh yeah, they're preventive health.
Yes, exactly.
Preventive health, yeah, preventive health. Let me do. If you've been with sneakers, exercising kind of it, anything that could mean you don't have to go as often to they would be more defensive. And it would be less costly. That's what you're saying.
That's what we're talking about. Prevention
and intervention.
Yes.
Prevention and intervention. Those combinations. But what I'm sharing to you, start from the beginning when you ask the question. There's no one from a public policy standpoint that is collectively taking this on. But I'm a colleague of mine's named Jim McGovern. He's from Massachusetts. He's trying to get the White House to do a session on hunger. On hunger. He got all of the members of the Congress, the chairman, because I was with him and a congresswoman by the name of Mary Gay Scanlon from the 5th Councilman District. I was on a tour with them in Southwest Philly. And if you go to Southwest Philly, They got some great food to table food. Farm to table, right? You go outside, very good. Out there in Bartram Gardens. Go out there in Bartram Gardens, Southwest Philadelphia. So I was out there with them. And as we were demonstrating these gardens, right, that feed in. If you recall, that's what Michelle Obama led on that in terms of obesity. You remember when she had that in the gardens, and the
Yes, of
gardens in
course.
return
Of course.
feed up, you do then food to the table. So it's those kinds of things that we have to make it a priority and a single focus. I've been fortunate in this respect. With the committee I sit on, Ways and Means, and I sit on Small Business Committee. I mean, I've been on it 5 years. I sit on the two committees that are cross-pollination of the transformation of this city. And the reason I want to use this city as a model is because we have opportunity to do that. If we have self-enlightened leadership, which is very important to do this. And I'm talking about this, I'm talking about the diversity that needs to be involved, African Americans, Latinos, others to deal with. These are very inclusive aspects of it, because you must have people who look like you, who are involved in it, who you're not apologetic about.
Well, we know that statistics states that when you see a person of color as your physician, that the numbers speak for themselves. How they're going to treat you from the moment you walk in, the type of medication that they're going to put you on, whether or not you can go to a hospital, or the simple fact that whether they believe what you say. So those are policies that definitely need to be changed as cultural competence.
Well, that's totally true. It's like you having this podcast and this discussion. Dishing with Patricia. That's a very appropriate title. And what you're trying to do is enlighten people. You're really trying to enlighten them. And a lot of times you have to raise that consciousness and the intervention skills. And you have to use all the different social platforms in order for people to be engaged. The newspaper ain't the only way people get their news. Right. You have to use all the tools, TikTok, Twitter, you name Instagram. That's the world we live in today.
Yes,
it's a much mobile world, so that's what you have to do.
How can my platform help deliver your message?
Well, I think that promotion. I'm glad to do what I'm doing here today with you, because it gives me the opportunity to add my voice. Look, there's 435 congressional people. I'm the only African American in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This seat was Robert N.C. Nix, who was the first member of Congress in Pennsylvania. That was 1958. Congressman Gray was the second congressman, and there was Congressman Lou Blackwell and Congressman Fattah. So just think in Pennsylvania, you know how long Pennsylvania been around, in existence, and you think I was the first African American. So the question is how I have used what I call my media toolbox to extend what you're talking about. So it's in a sense we're extending our public policy to a larger audience. There's 13 million people in Pennsylvania, 13 million, and there's 67 counties, and there's 2,600 local governments. So 67 counties, 27 local governments. Philadelphia is the largest city. Pittsburgh is the second largest city. So what it is like, for example, the first lady of the state is big on food, Frances Wolf. So I would suggest you get Frances Wolf to do one of your podcasts. Now, what better way? The first lady of Virginia, Terry McCullough's wife, used to call me because she was big on it. So the first lady of Pennsylvania, the first lady of Virginia, that's not an accident. And the first lady of the United States, Michelle Obama.
So food And talking about food is important to me. And like now you and I are talking about, I'm just getting a little emotional about it because I think that this is part of our journey to help buy food. So I'm interested to hear and to speak to anybody that will help bring about change when it comes to feeding people, feeding our children, feeding our adults. There should be no reason for anyone to go to bed hungry. Correct. There should not be an issue that every corner store collects your food stamps and all these other things, but have no fresh vegetables. Correct. In their market. Correct. And they're bombarded with sodas. Correct. So is there something that we could help in facilitating about change? Because for you to be able to collect this money and all these other things in these little small markets in the neighborhoods because they don't have access to a grocery store.
You are touching, look, a nerve in this respect for me as I got into this. You have to create alternative behavior if you want people to change alternative. You know, the marketing tool of sugar makers are very tough to beat. But the only way, my theory is you got to offer real alternatives for people to, my view. I don't think you can force it. Now, some people use that tool, and I'm not, Mike Bloomberg used a method in New York about the large soda drink. Right? Yes. I'm not critical of that. You got to use tools in your toolbox. So I'm one who much prefer what I call the soft approach, right? But it must be relentless. So when you ask the question, I just mentioned to you Michelle Obama. Who had more credibility than she did? Those women who were first ladies used their platform to effectuate behavior. So I'm just suggesting to you, I don't think it's an either or. I'm not one who says we're not using that. I mean, if Bloomberg doing what he did, he does it. Michael Nother attempted to do it. Jim Kenney did. So you got to understand the marketing tool of using sugar, those things that add negative to you. Believe me, you're affecting, because I'm telling you, by having these kind of campaign discussions, help drive. So in my case, the only thing I did is I used incentives to address the aspect of supermarkets. I used incentives, right, that drove behavior for the markets. I was able, fortunate enough, when I was a state, to get $30 million. Now, because I was in the position, I was able to do that. And because the governor at the time, Rendell, supported me, I was able to affect behavior. But then it went from there, and then I got the idea to the Obamas. They took the idea, and now it's a national idea. It's in the Farm Bill. So something I did here is natural. Matter of fact, I started a garden in the state capital of Harrisburg. I got Democrats and Republicans to work with. I worked with a Republican from Lancaster, and he said to me, make the distinction between soil and dirt. Yes. Right? There's a distinction. So he thought, it still exists. There's a garden in the state capitol you can see that they grow food. They grow food, and in return, they give it to the food banks. Great. Right? Great. That's 20 years. So you figure I started that. I wanted to see a garden in every capital because Eleanor Roosevelt, they had those victory gardens during World War II. That's the same concept. So you're talking about introducing this behavior. That's what I'm saying to you. I'll be the first one to tell you, it's a lot to try to affect people's behavior. Yes. I want you to be clear. You got to just keep chipping away and stand on it. So I'm going to jump to a book that you wrote a number of years, Making Ideas Matter. Tell me about that. And
What was, why did you write that? And why did you pick that title?
It's an interesting question. I wrote the book in 2013.
Okay.
I wrote it at the time. University of Penn had a public um, facility on public issues. I wrote it with a gentleman named William Eckenbarg, who used to be with the Inquirer. And I wrote the book because it was my way of having the nation be a classroom. It was my way that I wanted to do more to take, here I was a state legislator. I represented 65,000 people. And I knew I couldn't get to 65,000 people. I couldn't get to 13 million people. I couldn't get there. But I thought that writing a book would be a way of connecting to people. And what more appropriate title was called Making Ideas Matter? Because the power of ideas is what moves things. See, sometimes I think people get in politics and they don't get in politics for the right reason. I'm very blessed that I'm built on the shoulders of a lot of good people. And I think about uh, Reverend Leon Sullivan, particularly. And I think about him because I had the pleasure that I grew up in North Central Philadelphia, 16th and Cybert, and was raised around 19th and Oxford. And across the street was where OIC started in 1964. I was 10 years old when OIC started. So there was OIC started, and I was in North Central Philadelphia, and that's kind of where I grew up. And I always recall very distinctly that people would be out on their steps or stoops, and the food. There's all kinds of positive activity. So that environment affected me. And then when I moved to West Oak Lane, my mom separated. We moved to West Oak Lane. I really tried to duplicate what Reverend Leon Sullivan, he wrote a book called Build, Brother, Build. That's what Reverend Leon Sullivan wrote. That was really in contrast to Burn, Baby, Burn. So Reverend Sullivan used the platform of him being a minister coming from West Virginia and using that platform of Build, Brother, Build. I attempted to duplicate what Reverend Sullivan did with West Oak Lane.
Okay.
I started an organization called Ogons Avenue Corporation, and I built the shopping center. I tried to do what Reverend Leon Sullivan did. So the book purpose was to explain what was the roadmap that I chose to use. Whereas he used the church, Zion Baptist Church, as a clergy, I used politics to be my leverage to do the same thing. And in the book, it will tell you how I went about the roadmap. I mean, it's a very simple book. I'm a little biased. It's good, but the first chapter in the book, the gentleman asked me. He said, "Were you middle class?" Now, when I was 10 years old, I couldn't make the distinction between middle class and good. But this is what I did understand. Everybody in my household worked. My father was a mover, Quaker Storage at 9th and Montgomery. My mom was a waitress at Marriott, what used to be on City Line Avenue. The way I started counting was my mom used to bring the tips home, and we used to count up her tips. That's what we did. So what I'm saying to you is that I linked all these things together between counting up the tips, the food, all the food, and using the position as a platform. So the book for me was a platform to communicate to the masses. It was my view of telling people, like, this is my story. And is what's great about it is all the things are evidential based. I'm not telling you anything that if you check it out for yourself, anybody reads it and go through it. It uses stories that tells you about what's evidential based, things that you can see, that you can point to.
I have an issue with trying to find me something to eat when I don't cook. What are we doing to help these small business owners, small restaurants, get back on their feet? Because that's the backbone of so many people. It breaks my heart to see people put their hard-earned money, their children's tuition and everything to have these places. So what are we doing to help bring this back?
Well, before I talk about that, but I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what you said about small business and how I learned a lot about them. The Bynum brothers, if you're not familiar with them, I, as a young kid, used to go to the Impulse. And the father is still alive. I think he's 90-something years old. I watched his entrepreneur spirit. And he has two sons, Robert and Ben, I think it is, who have developed, obviously, restaurants all around. And ironically, we happen to have one in the neighborhood I represent, which is called Relish.
Okay.
And it's been in existence for 15 years. It's highly unusual that an African casual restaurant can survive and sustain in an African American neighborhood. If you look at most of the restaurants, they are in predominantly white areas, middle class areas. That's where they are. I was determined, as I said to you with Reverend Leon Sullivan, I was determined to build the sustainability of it. And Relish meets any standards. Matter of fact, Vice President Harris, before she became vice president, when she came here for Barack Obama, I took her for dinner at Relish. It's a part of branding. So when you say business location, small business, I have always been focused on small business. When I go to Washington, I get on the small business committee.
Okay.
2 weeks ago, I had the executive of the Small Business Administration walking along 52nd Street, the very site that Bill Clinton ate at Big George Restaurant and Barack Obama ate at Big George Restaurant. They both at 52nd and Pine. Okay, there used to be Mr. Sook's on 52nd Street. Now, I tell you all these kind of things because all of these various were trades of the development of the community. You couldn't develop the community if you didn't have these kinds of amenities in the communities. They're along Cecil Moore Avenue, they're along 52nd Street, they're on 60th Street. Those are the built. So today I'm trying through what you call the PPP program, which is through small business, the EIDL loan program and grant program. These are the resources that are available. Because the number one issue is capital and the availability of capital and access. And the point of it is it must be also some sense of ownership. But also we as African Americans, from a customer standpoint, have to know those connections. Because the importance of keeping these places alive is the customer base.
Correct.
Right? Got to be the customer.
Correct.
You got to have, but they got to have the finance. So CDFIs are very efficient in making more capital available, more so than banks. Now, banks are good, and the days like when Bruce Crawley used to be at days of First Pennsylvania with Elmer Young, I think his name was. And I say that because banking is about relationships.
Yes.
And if you got the relationship with the person, then you got the access to the capital.
Yes.
And those things go hand in hand. So what I have tried to do is tell you the story about Reverend Leon Sullivan. Reverend Leon Sullivan, when he was doing Progress Plaza, he went to the banker and was trying to get that land. And the kid, Reverend Sullivan had this program called 1036. He brought $400,000 carried in the thing. And he said to the banker, "Will this be enough?" Banker said, "Yes, Mr. Sullivan, come see me." The stories in my book about
Okay.
what Reverend Leon Sullivan did. I learned from that about the use of capital, the availability of the access of it. That's how you get their attention. So it is that branding, just like with the Bonham Brothers, it is that branding. It's that branding, it's the availability of capital, it's access to come. You must develop the capacity of workers. You must have good. One other story I want to tell you about Paul Beal's floors. Paul Beal, unfortunately, died this year. They've been in business for 50 years. The mother is still alive. She'd be 92.
They're my florists.
Okay, well, then you know. Well, the daughter who went to Morehouse College, she graduated. I said to her one day, she wanted to be in corporate work. I said, well, why do you want to do that? I said, why don't you work for Paul Beal? She said, get out of here. I said, listen to me. You build that. So she's there along with the grandson. That's how you build it. You build that accumulative wealth and institution.
Yes.
That's so what I'm saying to you is that is my focus on Small Business Committee, and that's what I'm trying to do now.
So we're going to take this moment to come and to create a couple of dishes for you. So give us a few minutes and we'll be back. Hey folks, welcome back to Dishing with Patricia. So I have Congressman Dwight Evans. He's going to assist me.
Yes.
But before we start, he and I have been enjoying this wonderful, it's plum lemonade.
It's fantastic.
Thank you. I'm all about, let me sip it for you. I'm all about having infused waters and lemonades just to break that habit of having soda in the house. So what is in this lemonade is a fresh plum, fresh lemon, agave, and sparkling water. You can find this recipe and nutritional content on classyandessentialnutrition.com. Thank you. So we're going to move on. Congressman, I'm so happy you're going to help me with this salad that we're going to make. Okay. So you have your lettuce.
Yes.
So I want you to just add a couple of little nuts to there.
Okay.
These are candied walnuts. And this recipe as well is on classyandessentialnutrition.com. Here is, I slice down some pears for you. So just add those pears into your salad for me too. And I have some cherries. These are dried cherries that will go in there as well. It's just you and I. Just use your fingers and spread it on over there. Okay, thank you. So mix those around. I made the salad dressing ahead of time. When you're making salad dressings, I always put my salad dressing in a blender because I want it to emulsify. I want it to be thick. I want it to be creamy. Right. And sometimes people just see oil and vinegar and it discourages them from having the salad. Right. The dressing, that is. Right. But if you put it in an emulsifier, it'll come out nice and thick. So what's in this salad dressing is maple syrup, cayenne pepper, olive oil, some ground cinnamon, sea salt, balsamic vinegar, and some olive oil. So I've mixed this already for you. So I'm going to plate you, this is his salad that's here, but we've made one already. So I'm gonna show it to you. And may I have this? And I'm gonna show you this salad that we've made already for you. And then we're going to plate it.
Oh, that's
look
beautiful.
Look how pretty that is.
That is beautiful.
That's pretty. So, I mean, you could always add other things to your salad. Right, you could add fennel, you can add avocados, you can do fresh strawberries. Right. I always put berries, summer fruit in my salads when I'm making them. And just because it's important for presentation sake. And I'm going to get you a knife and a fork. And I'm going to give you some fresh ground pepper, please. I mean, would you like a little bit of salt?
No.
No? Okay, okay. So this is the salad dressing.
Right. That's fantastic.
So please let us know what you think
you
about.
are making my point when I say education, and you raise people consciousness around the use of food and what it can mean.
And the
Correct.
simplicity of it.
Correct.
It doesn't take a whole lot of stuff. What you think about that?
That's fantastic.
You like that?
It is because it is something that is natural and easy to put together.
Yes.
Right.
Food should not only look good, it should be easy to put together, as the congressman just said. This just had an apple, a pear, nuts. The salad dressing only had like 3 or 4 ingredients. And guess what? It didn't cost you $5. Just the ingredients on this alone was less than $5. And you have more than what you get in a container from the market. And of course, the calories that are added onto your salad dressing,
Right.
on your dressed salads, is your salad dressing.
Correct.
That's what gives you all those additional.
Correct.
Plus, you can't tell how the salad tastes because you've drowned it in
Correct.
salad dressing.
But it is that kind of creativity and innovativeness connected to like a policy implication,
Yes.
which makes this work. You know, as you mix this salad and put it together, it's the same way we try to do with public policy.
Okay.
So when you talk, it's the same way.
So we're going to create another public policy based on food, and we'll be back. Okay, so let's go on with our next recipe. What we're doing now, of course, my assistant today is Congressman Dwight Evans. We're going to do some sweet potato fries, oven sweet potato fries. You can find this recipe as well as the nutritional content on everything that that you and I have cooked today on my website, classyandessentialnutrition.com. And we're also going to give you some websites that the congressman has spoke on that will help small businesses, restaurants, but also other thoughts about moving forward out of this pandemic, about how food is our medicine. So I'm really excited about this. So there are your sweet potatoes. Here is your olive oil. Just continue to move it around. Just pour it all on. Yep, yep. There you go. So move your potatoes around. I'm going to be your assistant today. So here is some salt. Just let it go. Yep. Here is some pepper. This is a little spicy. I would put half of that. That's cayenne pepper. So we put salt and pepper and now cayenne pepper. And here is some nutritional yeast. It's going to give us a kind of a cheesy flavor. Don't be shy. Move it around. And here is some turmeric. Turmeric is excellent in an anti-inflammatory. As I said, you can find out all the nutritional value, the benefits of the sweet potatoes, of all of my ingredients on classyandessentialnutrition.com. So do you mind if I just move this around for you? So this is simple. I thought about the congressman one day, if you're late coming in and you want something nutritious that's still going to be tasty, this would be an excellent choice. So I'm going to put this to the side because I've already made some. And here's your plate. So we've already made some ahead of time, just for sake of time, and because the congressman is busy, and I wanted you guys to be able to see this once it's done. So may I plate you some, please? And what you see me plating the potatoes around is a vegan aioli. So why don't you dip it in it's a little spicy. Tell me what you think. Yeah, just take your fingers.
Right there,
Right.
It looks like sweet corn. It's a nice taste to it.
And all of this is plant-based.
Okay.
Plant-based. So the aioli, I made it, first off, I started with soaking my cashews overnight.
Right.
Then I added lemon juice, some garlic, some agave.
Right.
But this is a little spicy.
Right.
I hope you can enjoy your.
Oh, I can.
You
I
can
really
do that.
can.
You
I
can do
really-
that.
And this would be for what type of occasion would you say?
You come home late night.
Right.
Folks are always saying, "What do you?" I don't have anything in my refrigerator.
Right.
We always usually have some type of potatoes in there,
That's
right? Because they keep. Surprise your friends. Hey, I got something for you, real quick. It won't take us long.
And the fact that they are sweet potatoes versus white potatoes.
Exactly. You should not have any white potatoes.
Correct.
Have their purple potatoes. They're all different types of potatoes.
Correct.
You should experiment. Make a recipe your own. Don't follow the recipe to a T. I never follow a recipe to a T. I make it my own. I add what they've told me. Then I want to add some other things. But here are some superseded granola bars. I did these today too. These are, I made these because you live a very stressful life.
Yes.
And these are wonderful for a quick little breakfast snack.
Right.
They all have medicinal purposes.
Right.
Once again, you can find that, please, on
Right.
classyandessentialnutrition.com.
I saw my name written on it.
You did? Okay. You like that? And this is lastly, is our fruits for September. You see the cabbage, the cauliflower, the apples, the peppers, pears, grapes, cantaloupe, the corn. All of this we purchased from a food bank here in Philadelphia because we believe in buying local.
Right.
We want to know where our food, environmental footprint come from, and plus we want to support our local economy.
Farm to table.
Farm to table. So this is farm to table. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. And Congressman Evans, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge about food and agriculture, how you want to change policy and set policy. I thank you so much
This
for
was a
coming.
fantastic lunch, and I come here anytime.
You're coming.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome to come anytime. So until next time on Dishing with Patricia, see you later. Bye.